the end of the work week. Good evening. You're watching The Big Story with Dylan Ang. I'm Olivia Quay, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom.
A multi-agency task force was formed today to ensure that people here continue good public and personal hygiene, even beyond the coronavirus outbreak. Called the SG Clean Taskforce, it will be headed by Minister for the Environment and Water Resources, Masagos Zulkifli, and it will fall under the purview of the existing multi-ministry COVID-19 task force. The task force will introduce mandatory cleaning standards from 2021 at places like preschools, elder care facilities and hawker centres. It will also encourage the public to adopt personal hygiene practices, among other measures.
Mr. Masagos said improved hygiene standards will have to be our new norms and that decontamination of the environment is a common and shared responsibility. According to research, environmental contamination is an important factor in the transmission of the virus, but the virus is also easily removed by disinfection, underscoring the importance of cleaning high-touch public areas.
The government will put standards in place and take enforcement action where they are not met. For instance, since 30th January, SFA and NEA have been conducting joint inspection at hawker centres to remind operators to maintain high standards of their operations. We have been also inspecting public toilets. We want to ensure that soaps are always available for public to use and not diluted, to make sure that they have access to soap to wash their hands. And therefore, we want premise owners to maintain the highest standard possible in the facilities they run.
The announcement of the SG Clean Task Force comes a day after Health Minister Gan Kim Yong said that Singapore must expect to see significantly higher numbers of new cases in time to come.
To tell us more about the task force is the Straits Times journalist Timothy Goh. So Tim, how will authorities make sure these higher standards of cleanliness are met?
Hi, yes. Sorry, I think there's a slight lag. Basically, it's a multi-agency task force. So the various ministries inside, the Ministry of Education, the Early Childhood Development Agency, will be working to audit the premises that are under their respective purviews. And part of this has already been rolled out with the Singapore Food Agency inspecting hawker food stalls, and NEA inspecting hawker centres as part of the SG Clean campaign. So something that's ongoing. There will be audits and checks by the authorities.
Now, Tim, speaking of the SG Clean campaign, it was actually launched earlier on February 16th. It aims to raise cleanliness and safeguard public health amid the outbreak, of course. Now, what are the differences between this campaign and what the task force does?
So that's a good question. I'd say the campaign is sort of like a precursor to this task force. The campaign focuses purely on food stalls and hawker centres, whereas this task force is looking at the whole of Singapore kind of approach. That's the first difference. And the second difference is that it's not just about, legislating and ensuring that places are up to standard, but also about inculcating good new social norms and practices among the population, such as binning your own salt tissue,
right.
not leaving a mess where you go, keeping the toilets dry, etc. So it's got a wider scope.
Tim, National Development Minister Lawrence Wong said that improving public hygiene is the easier to tackle. Meanwhile, personal hygiene and social norms are harder to influence. So do you foresee that the task force will encounter problems in changing people's mindsets then?
No, I don't really foresee this. I think that Singaporeans so far have been quite compliant with measures. And, cleaning up Singapore has been an ongoing process that we've been working on for many years now. So it's not like we're jumping from one culture to another. So I think what it takes is a bit of education, a bit of a push to get people used to this.
Now, Tim, just a final question. There will also be an amendment to the Environmental Public Health Act, which was announced in Parliament on Wednesday. Tell us about that.
So under this act, and this will, support the efforts of the SG Clean movement and the task force. Under this act, there will be stricter cleaning regimes put in place for various organizations. And they have to adhere to these rather than following their own plans. And aside from that, owners and managers of premises will now be held more accountable for the standards of cleanliness at their premises. So it's sort of like concretizing what the task force is hoping to achieve, which is a cleaner Singapore.
I see.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Tim. That was journalist Timothy Goh sharing more on the new SG Clean Taskforce, which was announced earlier today. And you can read all about it at straitstimes.com.
But what can each of us do to keep safe if we still want to have social gatherings? Or what are some social adjustments we can take while interacting with others? Multimedia correspondent Haryanto Diman with more.
Hi, Miss Teo.
Hello, Haryanto.
Oh,
Nice
yes.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Now, earlier today, the new SG Clean Taskforce has advised some adjustments to our social norms. Now, joining me today is Etiquette and Protocol Expert, Miss Teo Serli, who's going to be sharing with us some tips on how one can best conduct oneself in a social setting during this COVID-19 situation. You know, Miss Teo, let's focus on social settings.
Yes.
So, yesterday there was a report that says there's a new cluster that was formed in Safra Jurong, and it was from a private dinner function. You know, how can one keep oneself safe in a social setting like that, but at the same time also be free to mingle with others?
That's right. Okay, so the most important thing is, right, during this period, if you are not well, try to avoid all these big gatherings, you know, dinners and so on and so forth. Safest to stay at home. Right. But if you really have to go to a very important dinner, then what you can do is that the most basic, we always exchange name cards. Okay, so during this period, maybe you don't exchange name cards. Then maybe say like, okay, I will send you an email with my contact. Yeah? Okay, and then both can exchange through email.
So physically,
Physically,
get the number, physically don't, but then just get the number straight away or the email straight away.
That's right, or the email straight away. Yeah, so that's one. Then, of course, it's very important that when we sit down for the dinner, right, always use communal spoons or forks. Actually, this should be practiced throughout, whether it's this period or not this period, because it is only basic hygiene and basic etiquette that we must use communal spoon, okay, when you dish out food and all that. And then during these dinners, you'll always have a lot of drinking, toasting, cheers and all that. So this time, okay, don't clink your glasses. Yeah, don't clink your glasses. Cheers, and then you can just drink up.
Without
the touching of the glasses.
Okay.
That's right. Okay, and also sometimes during the dinner you may have to have like a quick sneeze or a cough. Okay, instead of using your napkins, which we always do, take out your tissue. Okay, after that, bin it.
Quickly.
Quickly, that's right. Okay, it would be best if you have the time, just excuse yourself, go straight to the washroom. Yeah, that would be the better one. Yeah. And also the other thing is that maybe when we are talking, keep a distance. Okay, people will understand that, you know, you try not to stand too close to each other. You can even keep, you see, more than an arm's length distance. That is perfectly all right this way.
Now, Miss Teo, now that there is the no handshake policy, if you could show us, you know, what other forms of greeting that one can do when meeting, say, a business partner or even in a more informal setting?
For us Asians, right, we have a lot of other forms of greetings. You see, even the Maoris, they used to, when they greet, they touch their nose, right? Right now, they even stop that. That's their basic. But for us, instead of the handshake, we can always do like what I showed earlier, like, nice to meet you.
Okay, so
you can do that.
2 palms together.
Yeah, 2 palms together. Or you can do this also.
Okay,
nice
so
to meet you. Yeah.
Clench your fists together.
So this can be for more formal settings like your business associates and all those people. Now, but for your friends and relatives, you can always do this.
Okay, the elbow bump.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right. Or your BFF, you know, you can do the fist bump. Yes, we can do that too.
Okay, so those are other forms of greeting apart from handshake that we can practice during this coronavirus situation. And that was Ms. Teo Serli, our etiquette and protocol expert, sharing tips on how one can best conduct oneself during a social setting in this coronavirus situation. Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman reporting for the Straits Times.
Catch a special Big Story episode this coming Monday, March 9th, where senior health correspondent Salma Khalik will host a discussion with some of Singapore's top COVID-19 experts, including Director of Medical Services at the Ministry of Health, Associate Professor Kenneth Mark. The panel will talk about how the outbreak will pan out over the next 3 months.
The Health Ministry confirmed 5 new coronavirus cases on Thursday night, bringing the total here to 117. A new cluster was also identified involving a private dinner function on February 15th at a restaurant in Safra Jurong.
The dinner function at Joy Garden Restaurant has been linked to 8 confirmed cases, including 4 of the 5 new cases. The Raffles Institution student and staff member at Creative O Preschoolers Bay, who are previously confirmed cases, are also linked to this cluster.
A key initiative in combating the virus has been the screening of all travellers entering Singapore at the various border control checkpoints. Depending on the symptoms displayed, these may range from temperature checks to nasal swab tests.
So a sample will be collected from the checkpoint and courier to the laboratory for us to conduct the COVID analysis. And it's a 3-step process. First step is to extract the RNA from the viral. So virus typically have RNA and human has DNA. So the second step will involve transcripting this RNA into a DNA before we do the polymerase change reaction process. So the polymerase change reaction process is as good as you having just one football in a big football field. You can't see the football, but after 2.5 hours of photocopying process, you have a football field full of football. That's where you can easily detect whether a virus is present. So in our chips, the third process is actually inserting this chip into an optical reader where you will then read this signal very clearly whether it's a positive or a negative. Irregardless whether the outcome is a positive or a negative results, we will inform MOH of the results.
The World Health Organization warned that there is a long list of countries not taking all the steps needed to fight the spread. The WHO called for heads of governments to coordinate all sectors instead of relegating the handling of the crisis to their health ministries. This would allow for aggressive preparedness in the battle against the outbreak.
This is not a drill. This is not the time to give up. This is not a time for excuses. This is a time for pulling out all the stops.
Meanwhile, the isolated kingdom of Bhutan confirmed its first case after a US tourist who flew in from India tested positive. In response, the government immediately shut its borders to foreign visitors for 2 weeks and temporarily closed schools in 3 areas.
Australia also ordered its first school closure after a 16-year-old student was found to have the virus. The affected school is Epping Boys High School in Sydney's north. The country has recorded 60 cases and 2 deaths.
Saudi Arabia reopened 2 of the most holy religious sites in Islam, Al Haram Mosque in Mecca and Al Masjid Al Nabawi in Medina. These sites had been closed for sterilization.
Meanwhile, as of 5 p.m. local time, South Korea confirmed 196 new cases and 7 more deaths. The number of cases in Italy keeps climbing as well, with 769 new cases and 41 more deaths, its highest single-day total to date.
And Hubei province in China reported 0 new cases over 24 hours for the first time during the outbreak. But this does not include the virus epicenter of Wuhan. Wuhan reported 126 new cases. Outside of Hubei province, there were 17 more cases in China.
In Parliament today, the government will set aside about $1.6 million to help the arts and culture sector deal with the impact of the coronavirus outbreak. This includes subsidies for venue rental and associated costs and grants for courses.
We want cultural performances to continue during this time, as the arts inspire us and lift our spirits, as long as necessary precautions are in place. We also want to encourage arts and cultural practitioners to take this opportunity to develop their capabilities and better position themselves for the future.
And from next month, Singaporeans aged 65 and above will be able to use all active SG swimming pools and gyms for free. Seniors currently pay between 50 cents and $1.50 per entry.
Sports and physical activity allow our seniors to sustain their health and mobility longer and continue to be engaged in the community. We will review the age criterion from time to time, in keeping with the trends and life expectancy of Singaporeans.
And athletes who were previously ineligible for funding can now receive financial backing for the next 2 years. An annual purse of $100,000 will benefit athletes in fields like skydiving, dodgeball and powerlifting, among others. These sports were previously not covered under the high-performance sports system.
And low-income Malay Muslim families will get more help to save for their children's preschool education. Set up by Mendaki and Muis, a new grant is open to families with children 6 years and under, as well as a monthly household income of $650 or less.
Let's take a quick look at what's making headlines beyond our borders. Britain's High Court has published a judgment in favour of Dubai's Princess Haya. This follows the high-profile case against Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum that began 8 months ago. The court ruled that the Sheikh had orchestrated a campaign of intimidation against his former wife and the abduction of 2 of his daughters. The princess, along with her 2 children, fled Dubai last year for the UK. She had told friends that she was in fear of her life.
In the US, Elizabeth Warren has officially dropped out of the 2020 Democratic White House bid after trailing behind frontrunners Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. She even placed 3rd in her home state of Massachusetts, which she continues to represent in the US Senate.
And former movie producer Harvey Weinstein, who was convicted of rape and sexual assault last week, was transferred to New York's Rikers Island jail complex after undergoing a procedure to clear a heart blockage. His sentencing is scheduled for March 11th and he faces up to 29 years in prison.
But before we go, do remember to tune in for a special Big Story episode this coming Monday, March 9th. Senior health correspondent Salma Khalek will host a special discussion with some of Singapore's top COVID-19 experts on how the outbreak will pan out over the next 3 months.
And for more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com. I'm Dylan Ang with Olivia Quay. Have a great weekend and join us next week for more stories on The Big Story.